On a mission given to me by Woody Shaw, Sunship, Dizzy, and John Kahn, dedicated to pursuing a piece of our cultural heritage through interviews with my music heroes, this is The Jake Feinberg Show. Folks, welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is The Jake Feinberg Show. Coming to you live on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast and the Jim Parisi Show and the Jake Feinberg Show. And we thank you so much for making us part of your day today so we can bring you enlightenment in this time from cats who are on the bandstand, not just playing music, but actually creating vocabulary in melodic improvisation. And I've been after this cat for some time. He's a dynamic performer on the live scene. In some ways, they've already actually given him his walk of fame, his place in the Hall of Fame, but I know he still, in his mind, knows he has a long way to go. Oteil Burbridge, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, how are you, man?
Hey, man, it's so good to connect with you, brother. How are you?
I am doing excellent. I love what you just said. Kind of I guess it's a little peek into your mission. Very cool.
Well, I mean, you know, whether or not you've been hip to it for a while or just getting to it, you're really going to fall in love with it because, you know, we're going to have a ball right now, man. I wanted to ask you, you're speaking to people all over the world, Oteil. I just wanted you to talk about the best way you think you empower yourself. What do you do in order to create positive change in your life during a time in Atlanta or in D.C. or frankly in most of the country where there's a lot of division and there's a lot of cats that are feeling paralyzed? But I know I feel pretty liberated after 5 years on the air, and I wanted you to talk about how you handle how you affect positive change in your life.
Ultimately by taking risks, I guess. You know, I mean, I've always been kind of, you know, Colonel Bruce Hampton had that album called Basically Frightened, and it just, God, it struck me so hard. I was like, that's me. This planet just absolutely terrifies me, you know? And so I just thought it was really cool that he kind of, you know, and honestly what he said to me when I met him, you know, I was very down about the music industry, and it kind of got me down about music itself in a way. And he said, well, you know, we're not going to make any money playing this music, but if you hop on board, you'll have the time of your life. And what do you have to lose? You're not making any money now. You know, and that's kind of like, you know, I think Jim Carrey, I'm paraphrasing, where he spoke at one of these colleges, but it was kind of something to the effect of, you know, I can make not a lot of money, or I can not make a lot of money doing something I love. So I might as well do that instead of not making a lot of money doing something I hate.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, man. I kind of feel like, you know, what you're saying. First of all, this was when you first moved to Atlanta. Is that, can you put it in context in your career when Colonel Bruce told you that?
I think I was 24 years old when I met him, so that was, you know, 26 years ago.
Can you? I want you to. Yeah, go ahead.
Moved there pretty much.
Yeah, no, I
just moved there.
I want you to expand on this idea because I actually feel like the Great Awakening will occur when cats actually walk away from the spiritual materialism and they go towards things that they love and they can touch. They go towards their true nature. And without getting into too deep a philosophical conversation, I really wanted to know you and your brother, your family, you were raised in D.C. and I've been woodshedding for a long time. Did you guys when was the first time you went to Howard University, and did you guys cross paths with Donald Byrd at all?
Actually, my brother played with Donald Byrd, I think, when he was like 12 or something.
I knew it because Donald Byrd came. I'm not saying because what blew me away. First of all, I just got hip to your brother today. I'm going to have to interview him immediately after. But his name is Kofi, right? And that was an album. It was a Blue Note album that Donald Byrd put out at one time too, which is fascinating.
You know what? I forgot about that.
but no, so your brother was playing because Byrd went into Howard University. I've interviewed all the Blackbirds. I've interviewed all those cats. I mean, there was no jazz program. Donald Byrd went in there and totally revolutionized it. And I get the feeling that your parents were very much into giving you an education through melody and through different forms of communication and language. I want you to talk about your upbringing and so your brother gigged with Donald, but I mean that kind of exposure that you got to roots music.
Yeah, we were so lucky. You know, my parents are from the Bronx, New York, and I really think music was my dad's religion. You know, and he was into everything. He was primarily into jazz. You know, he was pretty much there during the Harlem Renaissance. You know? He remembers when Dizzy Gillespie first burst onto the scene with this new music, and he wasn't even buying it himself. He thought it was BS, you know. It was over his head, you know what I mean?
I love it.
He was, so later he had everything Dizzy and Parker ever did, and even some reel-to-reel tapes that he taped off the radio. That were just broadcast, and those are still around somewhere. I hope they haven't degraded to it. But he had classical music, European classical music, Indian classical music. He had country and western, bluegrass, blues, funk, you know, opera, all kinds of stuff. I mean, everything. He was an audiophile, you know. And so we were very lucky. And then, you know, I got doubly lucky because they discovered Kofi had perfect pitch when he was 7 years old. And my dad was like, oh, wow. You can imagine what that meant to him. So then by the time Kofi was 12 or so, you could confirm this with him because my memory's pretty bad about a lot of stuff. But I think he was sitting in with Ron Carter and Donald Byrd and stuff like that by the time he was like 12. But you'll have to ask him and make sure and verify.
No, I'm going to talk to Kofi. Kofi is a transcendent. I mean, all I'm saying is, man, you listen. I've interviewed Brian Jackson, didn't get to Gil Scott, but you know, you listen to Rock Creek Park. There was this meshing, this ridiculous. I mean, you were marinating in this like that to me. I hate the word. I hate labels in music, but I mean, you were marinating in the greatest urban bastion of music, and I think it's important. Because, like, you know, you can watch all these clips on YouTube. You're on a big bandstand, whether it's with Dead and Company or, you know, it could be anybody, and you're playing to thousands of people, and there's television screens and so many other distractions. But is it fair to say that when you were coming of age in D.C., the culture was on the streets? The culture was in your face. The music was in your face. I mean, do you have vivid memories of I mean, just drums out in the streets, drum circles? Ultimately, you know, did you just have a lot of real world exposure to music? Obviously, your dad was an audiophile, but I just want you to get into that urban environment and what that was like.
Well, you know, when we were coming up, they had free concerts in the park. So I saw Milt Jackson with Grady Tate and Bob Cranshaw and Monty Alexander.
Oh, my God.
Toshiko Akiyoshi, big band, and all kinds of stuff that was just free. You just go to the park, and there it was, you know? And so that, I'm definitely grateful for that. A lot of the music on the scene that was going on that was not on the streets, so to speak, I was too young to see. So, of course, I heard all the go-go and all the funk and, you know, Bad Brains. You know, there's a black punk scene, and, you know, just like, there was, you know, but I couldn't get into the club. I've actually left before I could play them. Some of the clubs would let me in to play. My parents would come, you know, but I couldn't get in to see a lot of the stuff that was going on because I was still, you know, 17, 18 at the time, and I left right after that. But yeah, there's definitely a huge. It was a musical city for sure, and there were so many people around willing to help out. You know, I had great teachers on drums, on piano, on bass clarinet, and I taught myself on bass, but I had learned enough to the classical method, you know, on a lot of these instruments to kind of teach myself, and from hearing Kofi, because Kofi was at such an advanced stage of playing at such a young age, and that really helped me a lot because, you know, I thought he was normal. So I just thought that was the mark I thought you had to hit, you know, just the norm, not realizing he was super advanced. So it got my ear together really well, you know, just trying to keep up with him. You know?
Absolutely.
I feel like what I'm still doing is just trying to keep up with it, and I have not caught him by any stretch.
I mean, does that really in the grand, is that something that Oteil Burbridge really is, you're not that, it pushes you, right? I mean, it's not something that you get hung up on, though. I mean, the guy is an idiot savant in some ways musically, you know?
Well, it's, yeah, I mean, it's not a hang up, but it's just a mark, you know? It's like, I don't know, you have these marks that you set for yourself, and that's, you know, it's been a mark that a benchmark that I've had since I was like 5, you know. So it's just one of those things that never goes away. I think it's a good thing. I'm not hung up. I'm not hung up on it. I'm super, super grateful for it, especially now. You know, like he just, especially now because I know better now. You know?
I mean, can you talk about? I guess, you know, I want to read you a quote from a buddy of yours. I did an interview with him a couple months ago, Butch Trucks. He said, I've never played a drum solo in my life. I get tired of critics criticizing the Allman Brothers. They come to see a show and they say, it was a great night, but, you know, when the drum solo came around, it's time to go to the bathroom. I'm thinking if you're supposed to be smart enough to be a critic, you should know that a solo is one person. I've never played a drum solo in my damn life. It was me and J-Mo, which was a duet. We added Mark Kionis and became a trio. And then later on, Oteil Burbridge used to finish his bass solo. We would come back and back him up. He was out in front playing bass. After that, he would come around. I would play a little on my drums, and then I'd slide off, get on timpani, and Oteil would get on my drums. There were 4 of us going by the end. You call that a percussion ensemble, not a solo. So, I mean, can you talk about your earliest experiences just creating rhythms with your buddies? I mean, the Allmans, that's in the real time, but I mean, going back conceptually, how did you learn about the language of the drum?
Probably because most let me think of this chronologically.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning,
yeah,
because of my dad and the music that he exposed me to, a lot of which, you know, comes out of that rhythmic African tradition. No matter what other influences it took on in addition, but specifically there was a African drum group from Ghana that we took lessons from. It was called Contact Africa, and the leader's name was Kojo Baby, and me and him had the same birthday. I always remember that. And So I've learned the drums and the dances. You know. And I'm telling you, that gave me such a underpinning, a foundation in that rhythmic tradition. It's, you know, it's improvisatory. So that's my base, you know, and I'm really super grateful for that. You know. And then, you know, just everything we heard, you know, that's why I think some of my favorite music is from New Orleans. You know, and so much great music comes out of there. You know, jazz and funk and Zydeco and Indian funk and, you know, all the different things that you know, came out of that gumbo or went into that gumbo.
That's right. No, it's true. I mean, the drum circles itself, I mean, do you remember having like a transcendent experience where you were able to, you know, I mean, I've talked to so many drummers who, like Billy Cobham, would talk about, I mean, and this is a guy who never did a drug in his life, but, you know, he'd be at the end of a Mahavishnu tour, final show of a 3-week tour, and he's exhausted, and he's actually seeing himself on the side of the stage playing drums. Like he was outside of his own physical body. And to me, like, you go back to to the motherland of Africa, you know, where we all are from, you know, and that music is timeless, and that music is transcendent. And I mean, there's only 2 letters that separate magic and music. And I would love you to talk, if you could, about, you know, the first, one of the first memories you have of leaving, of the mysticism of music. I mean, that to me is the magic of it. It's not formulaic. It's not, we're just dealing in an incredibly formulaic, numbers, data-driven time. And that's not conducive for increasing the vocabulary of melodic music. And I was just hoping you could talk about one of those aha moments when maybe you did leave your physical body. You break it down.
I mean, every time. You know, I think the thing that I love to focus on in that music conceptually is that it's very trance-based. You know, it's like this repetition puts you in a trance. And everything is variation off of repetition. You know, it could be a super simple thing, but it has all these different permutations, all these different variations off of those themes. So once you get into the groove, when you're in the groove, you're in the trance. This is my opinion. You know, I'm not saying it's scientific fact or academic fact, but to me, once I'm in the groove, I'm in the trance. That's why the drummer is so important to me, because with the right drummer, I can be in the groove immediately. I can be standing outside of myself within seconds, within milliseconds. You know, so like every time I play with that African drumming and dance group, you're definitely in the mystic zone. I mean, just like you could smell it. Everybody's sweating and everybody's like out of their bodies at the same time.
I love it, man.
And the movement and the drumming and it's something that I think that's why it's kind of so popular with hippies and stuff. You know, they dose and or not, or just grab a drum. I mean, to me, honestly, the drum does what LSD does.
Can you unpack that? It's important. Please go on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I'm no stranger to dosing, and I'm a big marijuana advocate and stuff. Yeah, I did the vast majority of my dosing as a teenager, but you can get to that state without it for sure. Mystics have done it for millennia. You could do it by fasting. You know,
Absolutely.
You can do it
Absolutely.
by the whirling dervishes get there just by sitting in circles. You can do it by meditation. If you meditate long enough, you know, you feel that little tickly thing where your third eye is. You're like, oh, there we are. You know, you can do it all kinds of ways. Yeah, I mean, and then there's also, you know, obviously not just the entertainment, hallucinogenic philosophy. You know, that you have people that do it as a sacred way, ayahuasca and peyote and all these different things. That, make no mistake, I can get there just playing drums. Give me some drums, or give me anything to beat on, and give me about 20 minutes, especially with the right people. I mean, if you're doing it together, like, we can get there, you know. And I think, you know, it's just one of those, it's the way our brains are wired, you know.
Can you talk about, so, I mean, essentially, with my experience with psychedelics, they've always been profound, some very good trips, some bad, but ultimately there's introspection. You can see that there is a metaphysical path. And then, you know, I mean, can you parallel once you start cooking the groove for after 20 minutes on the drums, how it can be as transcendent as a blissful acid trip?
Well, especially when you're playing improvisational music, you know, this thing happens where the only way I can, or the most convenient way I can describe it is, if people are familiar with Star Wars and the Jedi, you know, where it's almost like your reflexes are faster. You get into this almost kind of superhuman zone that you cannot take credit for it at all, you know. And hence, that's why people even describe, they're like, they'll say, it seemed like I was watching myself do it. That's proof that you can't take credit for it. You know? Because when you get there, it's like, it happens itself, you know. So, I don't know. It's when we start playing together, you link up. You're almost like telepathic with each other, and you become of one mind. So you start playing the exact same thing together. Me and Kofi will actually make mistakes together.
Right.
Like, we're so linked up. If he goes off the rails, I go off the rails at the same time, or vice versa. Like, I don't even know who's leading the screw up because it's simultaneous. As we also will play sometimes the exact same rhythm or chord or as literal note sequences together, you know. The odds of these things happening are very, very, the odds against them are very high.
Right.
Very, very high.
Right.
But it happens all the time. I mean, me and Kofi didn't play together in a band like every night for 15 years. And then when we got together in Tedeschi Truck Band, first day, it didn't take any time to come back. This was immediate. And I was like, well, you know, you can write that off to we're brothers, and, you know, and that's probably some of it, you know, but there's some parts of the stuff that's just flat out mind-blowing and mystical, and, you know, it kept me interested, you know, all these years. I'm just beginning now to get really interested.
Well, I mean, this is so invigorating. No, I mean, you're hitting on all the tenets of the Jake Feinberg show. I mean, how do you? I guess how do you try to? I don't know how to even. Maybe this is not even a valid question. It's just sort of like you come out so giddy from that, so excited, not connecting musically with your brother for 15 years, and you guys are totally in sync, you know, and it's so exciting. How do you try to explain that to somebody? I'm not a musician, but I mean, even square cats. I mean, I just feel like there is a consciousness shift that needs to happen in our civilization. And a lot of it is predicated on melodic improvisation. A lot of it is predicated on, you know, trance. And a lot of it is about, you know, ultimately losing yourself. And on the bandstand, people can watch you. but is it humbling sometimes to be able to engage in something, like you said, superhuman, even though you're not taking credit for it as a human being? And how do you try to convey that to people who look at you like you have three heads?
Well, they do, unless I use the best way to convey it, which is to just do it for them.
Right.
Like, because I can't with words. That's why religion always just seems to go off the rails, because as soon as you attach words to something that cannot be described with words, then your mind latches on to a more limited interpretation of those words, instead of the words trying to point to something too immense to do something as small as words to describe. You know what I mean? So for me to, we could be having this conversation
I know.
for years, circling this thing, where
just got to do it, man.
Me, Kofi, and the percussionists just get together. I can play it for you. You can go, oh yeah, I get it. I don't know how to explain to people. I've tried, but I think this consciousness shift is happening, and there are more ways than just music. I think the arts in general are a great vehicle, all of them. But there's definitely a shift happening. I'm really glad.
Well,
really glad.
Do you? Yeah, no, this is fat. Can you talk about the first time that you went to Africa? Have you been back to the motherland?
I did. My wife works for this group called Gorilla Doctors. They are the vets that treat all the mountain gorillas. And when she was based out of Rwanda, that's actually when she was with Giant Office Gorilla Farm. I visited her, and I went on the gorilla trip. Wow. Yeah. She misses it so much, and I totally get why. But she had been a number of times before I got there. And, man, it's such an ancient, everything is so much bigger here. Like worms, spiders, birds, like whatever, it's huge. Holy cow, on the way up the track, the tracker pointed down and see it was an enormous snake, but it was white. And I was like, oh my God, that's a worm. What the hell? Are you kidding me? It's a magical place. Like, it definitely changed my life. I can't wait to go back.
Oteil, if you can, I want to make sure we capture every word, and some of the audio is getting a little bit funky right now. So just try to talk into the phone the best you can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
you know what's going on? I'm in Whole Foods right now, and I think the reception is not that great. So let me go. I'm going to push my cart up here, leave it by the front door, and go outside.
Yeah. It's good to be in Whole Foods right now. No, I mean,
yeah.
Can you talk about? Did you actually partake in any musical experiences? Like I've talked to cats who just would be sitting on the streets and seeing somebody playing a tambourine playing in the meter of 17, and it was just like, the point is that they were absorbing regular peeps playing the daily music. It wasn't pop music. I keep going back to this idea of not being exposed to pop music. Did you have any? Yeah. Can you talk about just engaging with the street people and actually maybe even playing with them, being like, this is just daily stuff. It's just so magical.
Well, where I was very out of the way. It's a very small town called Ruangari, but at the base of the Virunga mountain range, at least the part of it that's in Rwanda. And there wasn't a lot of opportunity for me to, go into town and stuff like that. But I still got to jam with people there because I brought my banjo with me. I started playing banjo when my wife left. She had moved to Africa for a year. It was the second year that we were married. And, I was just losing my mind. I picked up the banjo. And then I found out from a lot of my banjo friends that banjo comes from Africa. So, and Bela Fleck even made a movie about it called Throw Down Your Heart, where he goes to the different places in Africa where it comes from. I think it was Tanzania, Uganda.
Absolutely.
I can't remember. There's like 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm deep into the banjo, like learning Scruggs style, but then I started trying to write these African grooves, trying to pull on my experience from that as a kid, which was initially very hard, but I finally got into the groove and figured it out and wrote a bunch of tunes. And when I took my banjo over there, I was in the process of still writing these tunes, because they're basically exercises that were helping me get my banjo chops together, what teeny bit that I have. And then they would kind of become songs. And so I sat around the house when Jeff was at work practicing banjo pretty much all day long, because I didn't have a car. I couldn't get down into town. That was, there wasn't a whole lot to do.
No, this is so. Can you? Yeah, go ahead.
But one of the kids that was, they have a staff of people there that works for Fosse Fund at that house. That house could house, I think, up to maybe 4 people in that particular one. So there was a cook. There was people that came around to take care of the yard. The water would get cut off, so they would have to bring water. The electricity would go off for, it could be 3 days or whatever. I was there for 10 days. The water could go off for 3 days. So, and he was really a kid. I think he was, I don't know, maybe 13 or so, maybe 14. He would come by and he would be doing yard work and stuff, and I'd be sitting back there playing banjo. And he asked me if we had a guitar, and Jess had brought a guitar with him. So me and him are sitting out back jamming on guitar and banjo, and he's teaching me these African, these are Rwandan. I don't know whether they're popular or folk songs. I have to characterize it more as a folk song because I think it's pretty old. And we had a drum, and so he would play drum and I would play banjo, and it was super cathartic for me, after my experiences as a kid with Contact Africa and that group,
Sure.
So it was, and I have some of it on videotape. It was just
I would love. Amazing. I think that stuff needs to get out. For me, I would love if you. I mean, you started. You said when you first picked up the banjo, you were playing sort of flat and Scruggs, more Appalachian style. But with the African banjo, what is that like? Is it just more cyclical? I mean, can you break down the difference between how the banjo music is made in bluegrass country music as opposed to African music?
Well, where they meet is clawhammer.
Yeah,
that's
right.
How those instruments were played in Africa, and that's the first way that they were played here, because that's where it comes from. That's what they saw. And then the instrument itself evolved, and then more of the white players started using finger picks. And so I still practice bluegrass much slower than my friends play it. So just because I play 3-finger technique, I use finger picks. I don't use, but my aim when I started was I really wanted to learn these bluegrass tunes, and I still practice those for the technique, but then I have my own songs that I use. So mine is definitely a hybrid. That's why I call the music Afrobilly, because the Afro is all the musical part, and the Billy part is the finger pick.
Afro Billy.
Yeah.
Term, dude. I really.
I have like almost the whole album of the stuff done. It's got vocals and everything, and uh-oh. Sorry.
Yeah.
Hold on. How do I do this? Somebody's beeping in on me. Anyway, yeah, that's that. When I took the banjo over there and I was playing with this guy, I was just like, oh man, it works out perfectly together. I'm sorry, this guy's texting me. He was supposed to meet up, but yeah, it was amazing. I've been hoping to get that music out soon.
Oteil, before I let you go, I know I'd love to do part 2 with you, and you have a little more time. But I just wanted to ask you about your experience playing with Billy Kreutzman, because you had an upbringing where you learned that about timeless music and the cyclical nature of music, and I just was hoping you could talk to the audience about the philosophy of that any note can be the one.
But when it's time for mommy to go, it's time
that
for
when,
mommy.
Oh yeah.
That ultimately that when everybody's on the same page, that it all can come back around again. And I look at it and I say, I hear things from certain cats about Billy that the Dead used to say, or Jerry and Billy used to say, let's just keep Phil Lesh in the band, but let's just bring in a bass player because we need somebody to lock the groove. And then I'm like listening to Oteil, and I'm like, well, the Almonds, they're a certain type of groove, and then the Dead are much different. But, ultimately, it's a liberating thought when you realize that any note can be the one. And I just wanted you to talk about your that evolution of you and Kreutzman cooking the groove together.
Well, it's that's something that I think is pretty much universal in any type of music. Like, for instance, the way that I learned to play odd time signatures was the way that Kofi taught me. And I never counted things out, even though I'm a drummer. It was just easier and quicker for me to feel the pulses and attach myself to the rhythmic melody, like latch on to the rhythmic melody. It's something I talk about a lot when I teach. There's harmonic melody and there's rhythmic melody. And rhythmic melody is really, really strong. That's something, again, that you find in African music that, dominates it, So the way I do it is I find the pulse, whether it's eighth notes. So if we're 7, 8, if I just keep playing eighth notes, like what Billy says, or Butch, if you get lost, as long as you're still on the eighth note, you can find the one again.
I love it. Love it, man.
Yeah, so all you have to do is make sure that your tempo is not dragging. If your tempo is on and you're playing eighth notes, one of those 7 is the one. So you can bounce around that a lot. Now, for me, it's fun to keep track of the one, but it's not necessary. And if everybody decides, okay, we're not going to keep track of the one, then we can all let it go. Or what you find a lot in like the Dead is that, and I didn't realize this until I started playing with them and scoping out the YouTubes harder, is that Bob is keeping the one. He'll keep playing that 7 on the rhythm guitar. He's moving around and doing variations, but he's sticking on it,
Absolutely.
Now, at some point, he may even let it go, but I noticed, through the jam, because me and Clementi will keep the one. I lose it sometimes. I get happy feet and fall off the balance beam. But, when me and Clementi were, sticking the one every time in the odd times, I noticed Bobby was there, too. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Deceptive.
Very.
On my first, not as deep listening. on the YouTubes and stuff, or on records. So, but that could be done in any music, really. That has that base of improvisation, for sure.
One more thing for you, Oteil. I just, well, actually, I have a lot of things, but just one more thing is, can you talk about how proud you are of Barack Obama? If you are.
Well, I'm actually, I was hoping I wouldn't have to get into politics on this.
No, it's not politics. I'm just saying, I mean, after he is finishing I'm a big fan. I started my show 6 years ago in response to the way he was being treated. But all I'm asking you to do, nothing political, just say, what is your take on him, and how do you think he handled himself amidst so much dysfunction in our country, and are you proud of him?
I guess, I'm proud and deeply hurt and disappointed at the same time, too, because a lot of things he said he was going to do, he went back on. But you're talking to a radical. I don't consider myself a person on the left or the right. I want things to be done fairly, So I could get into all the things that he went back on, and some of them are very important, like all the surveillance state needed to be reined in, and he didn't at all. In fact, it grew, and now he's handing it all over to Trump. So the real danger is going to be presenting itself here in a little while. But I will say this, especially in light of what we're dealing with now, he didn't drag the office through the mud. He did it with dignity, and he honored the office. I can't fault him for not being as radical as I am, because he's a politician, and and he took a great deal of money, the most in history up until that point. Some people that don't want things to change. But, he didn't demean the office. There was no scandals. I'm really grateful for that. I think everybody can be proud of him and Michelle for that, the way they conducted themselves during and before, because imagine if Michelle had porn photo shoots out there that he would have never gotten through the primaries. You know what I mean? That's the stuff. And I tell this to my conservative friends, and I don't use Barack. I use Reagan. Imagine if Reagan had said it something, or Nancy. Are you kidding? If Nancy Reagan had, so I just so I think, in that sense, I am grateful and proud. He didn't demean the office. Trump has drug it through the gutter before he even got in.
Well, that's what just living in talking to people, how do you deal with cultural bias? And how do you deal with people that are unwilling to actually, we're at the precipice of insanity now, where there's many cats who just don't believe the truth, and they don't want to believe the truth. And so how do you...
Yeah, well, there's a lot of that on our side too, man. A lot.
Well, but it doesn't seem, but you're not even on any side, because you call yourself a radical, and I like that term, and I think that you're right. I think that it's unabashed. It should be not apologetic, and all I'm saying is that, well, we don't have to go.
Here's what I think, and that's the question I keep coming to. I think the problem in this society is that both sides feel like the other side is trying to ram their values and lifestyle down the opposite side's throat every 4 years. So, I heard a discussion on Syria yesterday, and they were saying, look, these borders were made arbitrarily after World War II or whatever, and they weren't done acknowledging the realities of the situation on the ground. So people are starting to say, the real solution probably is to partition it. Let Iraq and Syria, and these different places that we're trying to, like, nation build. Let the Kurds have their own country. Let these, partition. I thought this morning, we need to partition the friggin' United States.
Well, that's what they're. No, and I think that's where. No, but I think that's where it's going.
Yeah, they're not going to agree. I mean, you see it with Brexit. I've heard of Calexit, and I'm like, maybe it's not such a bad idea. If you want to live some Christian version of Sharia law, if you want to be a racist, if you want to be, you don't want me around or Mexicans around or Muslims, it's okay. I cannot control everybody on Earth. Like, this, you see this nativist thing popping up all over, although I think it's hilarious in terms of America, because it's real old natives in America are the only ones that can be nativists. Hey, whatever, this is, for the sake of argument, so I live and let live, man. Like, I think we need a new solution besides the two-party system. I think maybe we need to let them secede, or whoever wants to secede. Like, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Well, I do want to say,
I do know that I'm scared.
Well, no, I am.
It's just a gun-happy culture, and when you introduce all the guns into it, that's what I think.
Well, also, I mean, it's I have two daughters.
Yeah.
I have two daughters. You have kids. It's like, I guess my point is that when his potential attorney general says people that smoke marijuana are not good people, I'm not going to live in a state. I feel like states' rights are on the way, man. I really, really do. I feel very.
Yeah, but you know what, man? States' rights ain't bad.
Oh, I dig. I think I know. Listen, you know what? Listen, can we?
It's a double-edged sword. The South used to always use that, but that's how we've gotten marijuana legal with these states' rights. So it's not all bad.
Hey, Oteil, listen, man. Can we do part 2 a little bit down the road? I'd love to talk to you more about music. And I'm coming after Kofi too. I'll text you. Maybe you can hit me with his contact info. I'd love to hook up with that cat.
Absolutely, man.
Yo, man. Absolutely. Happy Thanksgiving. Love to you, brother. I hope to meet you in person one day. You can swing we can play some drums or something.
You too, man. Bless you for doing what you're doing.
Love you, man. Take care.
Love you too, man.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Peace. And we'll be right back with Mario Cipollina on the Jake Feinberg Show.